Hey, welcome to That One Time, the place for unforgettable moments and stories worth sharing. Funny, touching, surprising, just like life itself. Grab a seat, get comfortable, and let's dive in. A quiet, small village was waking from its night slumber. The air carried the cries of roosters and the lowing of cows impatiently waiting to be driven out to pasture. By every yard at the crossroads, several beautiful cats huddled together. Everything around was coming to life, but this hardly brought the residents even a shred of joy. The village was slowly fading, and even the few houses that still stood were not fully inhabited. In many windows, the flame of life had gone out long ago, and it seemed forever. An old man who had just gotten out of bed began to dress, pulling on a soft tracksuit. Such weariness and dejection were evident in his appearance, as if he hadn't rested at all. "Where are you off to?" His wife's voice rang out. She had only slightly raised herself in bed. Seeing that her husband was ready, the elderly woman also began to get up. "I'm going to the Smiths to get the dog." They left, abandoned the dog to its fate, and it's going mad on its chain there from hunger and fear. And they swore to me, promised they'd take him. How much more can one take? Look at them, calling themselves people. The old man fumed. Having gotten ready, he left the house. The woman was in no hurry to follow him. She put on her slippers, dressed, shook off the remnants of sleep, and headed to the kitchen. She cooked porridge for herself and her husband, and separately, having boiled broth on bones, prepared food for the dog. She removed the bones, leaving the food to cool. Her husband was still not back. Apparently, he was struggling, trying to free the dog from its chain. Suddenly, a joyful yelp was heard, and a young dog, at full speed, burst into the kitchen, breaking sharply by the table. The teenage dog looked at the woman in fright. He pressed his ears against his dark muzzle, cowered on the floor, and backed towards the exit. "Now where are you going? Stay. Here, eat some tasty porridge in meat broth," the elderly woman said kindly, placing a round bowl on the floor. The puppy looked at her distrustfully, then straightened up and hurried to the treat. He snatched a large piece of boiled meat from the bowl and then quickly finished the rest. The full dog curled up on the mat and fell asleep. Her husband returned a little later. He stroked the sleeping dog and sat down at the kitchen table for breakfast. Their old friend George entered after him. Soon the whole company was gathered around the table. Despite the bright, life-affirming spring morning, their conversation was far from cheerful. "My son called me yesterday, asked how we were doing here. I told him straight. Things are bad. Our village is dying," George said wearily, with sadness in his voice. "And he tells me, drop everything, come to the city, I'll rent you an apartment there. So I'm thinking, maybe he wants to prove something. But what's the point of sitting here? Waiting for what? The last shop closed, we're sitting here, waiting for things to change. We have to face the truth. There's no life here anymore. I tell Eleanor, come with me, but she won't have it. She wants to live on the land, and so we stay. We have no children. They all went into the ground before us. And what about us? What would we do in the city, looking at strangers? We both worked hard our whole lives and for little result. Our pensions are beggarly. If we can afford a city apartment, we'll swell up from hunger there. So we decided to stay. We have a large farm. The garden is enough. We'll live on our own land with what God has given us," said old Arthur. He took out a hand-rolled cigarette and lit it. When he and his friend went outside, they sat down on a large carved bench, leaned back against the wall of the house, and almost simultaneously released two clouds of smoke. "I'd send my wife. I'd stay myself, but she won't go. We all know that sooner or later we'll be gone, but I don't want to be completely alone here." They just sat there, smoking. George left, leaving the couple by themselves. They talked about the farm, about the livestock, about the land possibly becoming depleted. All their thoughts revolved around the dying village. The whole day passed as usual. They took care of the livestock, worked in the garden. In the evening, they went for a walk. They walked down the street, counting the abandoned houses. The dog, scared, did not leave its new owner's side for a step. When it became completely dark, another sad truth was revealed. The streetlights were on every other one, or even less frequently. "How will it be just the two of us?" Eleanor said, leaning on her husband's shoulder. "Let's sit on the bench by that abandoned house." Branches of flowering lilac bent over them. After sitting for a bit, the couple headed home, but they hadn't managed to close the gate when a young man flew into it. "For God's sake, hide me! I'll give my soul! I'll give everything, just hide me!" the young man pleaded. "Get on your knees!" The couple exchanged glances. The old man literally dragged the young man into the yard, pulling him on his knees across the green grass. "Eleanor, quickly into the house," the elderly man commanded, and then turned to the young man. "And you, quietly and quickly after me." They went across the entire yard to the far greenhouse. There, the old man placed the stranger behind a tall cabinet, stacked with pots of plants, and moved a shelf with tools next to it. "And not a sound until I come for you myself." But they didn't have to wait long for the pursuit. The old man returned to the house, hearing strange people in black uniforms knocking on every gate in a row. It was their green gate's turn. The old man took deep breaths, trying to calm down. He went out to the strangers, peering into their stern faces. "Times are troubled now, boys. What do you want?" Arthur asked, deciding to pretend to be a simple and slightly naive villager. "We don't have much food, but we can give you some apples and milk. But there's nowhere to spend the night. The house is small. My wife is sick. You can stay at the Smiths. They abandoned their house. There's plenty of space there." "Don't get in the way, old man. We're looking for a certain bastard. Haven't seen a fair-haired guy?" one of the men asked roughly. "Let us through. We'll look ourselves." They indeed entered the yard, holding their automatic rifles at the ready. They went around the house, the entire yard, and reached the greenhouses. They turned everything upside down there, but the cabinet didn't interest them. It stood so tightly that it seemed as if it was pressed right against the wall. The dissatisfied brute turned to the old man. "We'll be in your village for 3 days. If this hawk isn't found, you'll regret it. But if he is found, tell us. I'm generous with rewards," the bandit said, glancing around the largest greenhouse one last time. Soon, the entire suspicious company disappeared behind the gate. The old man just sank onto the grass. Only now did he fully feel the fear that had gripped him from head to toe. He sat, holding his head, and wondered what this young man had done that such hardened bandits were looking for him. The old man got up and went to the greenhouse, turning off the light along the way. The darkness was impenetrable. The old man took the young man and led him along the trees to the back wall of the house. There, the young man climbed through the window. The old man went around the house and entered through the main door, turning off the beautiful street lamp. He entered the house. "Eleanor, don't turn on the light. Let's feed the young man in the living room. He can't be seen from the window there," the old man said, and then turned to the young man. "Well, tell me, where did you make such a mess that such brutes with automatic rifles are looking for you? Just don't lie to me, or before you know it, I'll hand you over lock, stock, and barrel. If you're some kind of murderer, there's no place for you in this house." "My father is a wealthy man. He owns a business. Well, his business started melting away like cotton candy in damp weather, and he desperately needed money. So he borrowed from these people, but he didn't pay it back, and they decided to get to him through me. As soon as I found out, I jumped in the car and fled the city. I abandoned the car, covered it with branches in one of the yards. I thought I was done for, but then I saw you, and I came for help. Believe me, I will never forget your help," the young man said. He stayed with them for 3 days, hiding from every glance. He spent all his time only in the house, crawling under windows, staying out of sight. Only once did the bandits come again, and one of them asked, "Why aren't you turning on the light, old man?" But he waved his hand and said they were saving money. The pension, he said, was tiny, and utilities were growing like weeds. Early on the 4th day, Eleanor stood by the table. She cut a large piece of homemade cheese, put in some apples, added a hefty slice of bread, some boiled eggs, and slipped in a small bag of salt. She put all this into the old man's backpack and gave it to the young man. He was almost moved to tears by the moment. These people not only hid him, but also provided him with provisions. And the previous night, he and the old man had spent planning his route. He left, saying a warm goodbye to his saviors. 15 years passed. That situation faded from memory like a bad dream. The old woman sat outside, holding a basket of apples at her feet. She couldn't get up, her legs felt like lead. She was tired of working hard every day. The garden was depleted. Almost all the livestock had gone for meat, and they were practically the only ones left in the village. The old man also began to decline. Age was taking its toll. He fixed the house less often, busied himself in the yard and garden less often. He had no strength left for anything. So, Arthur, we'll die just from apples. It's a good thing our apple tree bore fruit and has been plodonocid for so many years. Otherwise, we would have starved to death completely. Let's walk around the gardens. Maybe we'll find something, Eleanor suggested. Lately, they had often visited other people's yards in search of food, but the supplies of former neighbors were not endless either. Both understood that they were unlikely to last even until winter. They sat and talked, remembering the past, their youth and strength, but their conversation was interrupted by the creak of the gate. A man entered the yard confidently. He looked at them and smiled broadly, as if they were his long-unseen parents. At that very moment, the old woman and the old man rushed to embrace him, instantly remembering that it was him they had hidden from bandits 15 years ago, risking their own lives. Aunt Eleanor, Uncle Arthur, get ready. That's it. You won't return to this house anymore. You saved my life, and I won't leave you here to die. Now I am free from everyone, which means I can openly help you. Come on, gather everything important and let's go. I have an SUV with a trailer, a lot will fit. Leave the furniture, there's some there, Eugene said. He looked at them with such warmth, such kindness and care, that they didn't doubt for a minute. Yes, to be honest, they had no choice anyway. In a couple of hours, they gathered everything necessary: clothes, books, old photo albums, some memorable things. The couple went to the far corner of the yard and stopped for a minute by the mound where they had buried the dog 2 years ago. They shed tears, remembering the mischievous boy, said goodbye to him, and returned to the car. They got into the car, holding hands, and drove almost the entire way in silence, not knowing where they were being taken or why. The car covered a good 100 kilometers and entered a beautiful modern village, full of life. The old woman suddenly cried, not believing her eyes. They stopped near a beautiful single-story house with a small yard drowning in flowers. The driver turned to them and said, "Now you are my grandmother and grandfather, so accept this gift from your grandson." Eugene smiled. "If it weren't for you, I would have been killed. I will be eternally grateful to you. This house is now yours. And don't worry about money. Here's a card. Consider it unlimited. I will constantly top it up. And please, don't deny yourselves anything. Absolutely anything. There will be plenty of money. Well, that's all I wanted to say. Explore your domain." The old man got out of the car, helped his wife out. They walked on, holding hands. A beautiful, bright, spacious house with modern renovations, a large open veranda, a barbecue, a small garden, and a small greenhouse for herbs. And the front part of the yard was covered in rose bushes. "Eugene, you say you saved you, but it's you who saved us from starving to death," the old woman said gratefully, hugging him. He looked pleased and happy. "Come visit often. I'll be here every week, you can be sure. I live nearby in the city, so I'll be a frequent guest," Eugene smiled. He was happy that he had truly been able to thank the people who had saved his life. The man got behind the wheel and drove away, leaving the old couple to settle into their new home. They sat on the sofa and both cried tears of happiness,